Welcome to Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. I'm your host, Evan Graber. Today I'm joined by Nathan Van Coops, author of the Archangel Aviation Thrillers, as well as multiple best-selling time travel and adventure series. Nathan brings a professional aviation background to his fiction. He's a pilot, instructor, and examiner, but he also brings a savvy approach to publishing that's earned him a loyal readership on Amazon and beyond. Welcome to Plot Recon, Nathan.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you getting me on. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure.
man. Just trying to talk to fellow thriller authors and get to know them a bit. And so let's dig into that part. How did you get into aviation? And
Well, aviation preceded my writing by many years. I started flying as a teenager. Actually, I soloed an airplane on my 16th birthday, which is kind of a rite of passage for a lot of people, growing up in aviation. Where if you can get your solo in before you get your driver's license, it's kind of a little badge of honor. And so did that, and it was always around it. I was grateful that my parents were supportive of it as a interest. I came from I've never been in the military, but my grandfather was military. He was a fighter pilot in World War II, flew P-38s, and then he went on to have a long career in the Army, Air Corps, and eventual Air Force, and then flying, all kinds of aircraft, which was really cool. I guess it's all Army, but it was inspiring for me. And then my family, my mom was always a big supporter of me getting into aviation, and I loved it. So I got into a career flying initially. I flew a morning and afternoon rush hour traffic patrol. My very first commercial job. I was flying with a guy named Detour Dave up in Westminster, Maryland. We'd fly the Baltimore, Beltway and do morning and afternoon rush hour traffic. And I got into instructing a little bit, and then I found my way into maintenance. Ended up becoming an aircraft mechanic, and then I still always had this creative side to me, though. And then so I found myself looking for ways to express that, and then that's where the book started showing up. I'd be writing on my breaks, my lunch breaks, and getting my laptop out and crafting stories. And for a while, those had nothing to do with aviation. For a long time, I was writing time travel and just, fantastical adventure stuff. And then eventually it finally dawned on me, hey, maybe I should use some of this career in aviation as actual material. And, by then I had, 10 years in as a writer. So I was able to come at it fresh, but with some experience. And it turned out to be a really good combination of, that moment, and then also finding a new, fresh audience of thriller readers who were, into authentic aviation writing, because it's one of those things where you can't fake authenticity, right? And I had the knowledge that pilots were looking for, being like, okay, you don't have to be a pilot to read these thrillers at all, but the ones that are appreciate that they don't have to cringe through it, and just like anyone who's savvy at if you're a doctor and you're watching a medical drama, you're cringing half the time because of the things that are inaccurate. Same thing with aviators. We watch movies with airplanes in them and say, oh, that can't happen, that wouldn't work. There's always that element in there. So I was happy to find a little niche where I could provide books for people that like airplanes. At least I get the aviation right. I might mess up other stuff. At least I got the airplane parts right. So it's been fun.
cool. So when did you start publishing? Did you try to go the traditional route, or did you just jump right into self-publishing?
I came out at a really interesting time because I started fiddling around with the book in like 2008. And then, of course, 2011 is right when Kindle came out and print on demand. Amazon was really rocking the world with their new model. And I had read a couple of books, and they kind of exposed me to the idea of self-publishing. And I had sent out some query letters, tried a little bit of the traditional agent route and stuff, but like it wasn't, what I was writing was not meeting the market anywhere where TradPub wanted books. That wasn't something that was going to be effective for them. And I said, well, what? I think I can find an audience. And sure enough, I plunked this book right into the middle of this genre, which was time travel. And I got really lucky where I found an audience that were just looking for these like Back to the Future type adventure stories, which is what I was looking for on the bookstore shelves and not finding. And so I found this little readership of people because I had spent, 4 years thinking about this book, and, I'd done the best job I could with it. And I had a critique group that I was meeting with every couple of weeks where we would, share each other's stuff and edit it for, really kind of put it through the test to make sure it held up. And like I said, sure enough, it worked. And then once you do one, you're like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then you put out the next one, and the next one was even bigger and broader and more adventurous. And that one really showed me, okay, this is actually make money now too. This isn't just a side hobby. I could potentially make this into something. And I was very happy to go indie because in the trad world, like the first 30 days to 6 months of your book's life is like the only indicator they use. They're like, okay, well here, if it doesn't sell right away, then it's not going to sell, and they stop promoting it. Whereas for me, like that book that I put out in 2013 has gone on to make bundles of money for me over the years because I never gave up on it, because I added more books to it. I made a box set of it. I put it out there. It still is my best money maker now, even though I'm, writing different things, and I'm a better writer now, 15 years in or whatever it is. But because I self-publish, because I'm doing my own, indie publishing thing, I'm able to promote my backlist. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't think about when they're trying the trad way. There's benefits, obviously, both directions. It's not to say that you can't find success in the trad market as well, but I'm very happy with the choice I've made to stay indie and keep my rights to things, and especially in audio. I've made a lot of success. A lot of my money I've made has been in audio because science fiction has been such a great market for audiobooks, and I wrote long audiobooks. So that's been great. And then I'm doing the same thing now with my thrillers, where I really double down on making really high quality audiobook content and making sure that I push that, and it's doing really well.
Yeah, I saw that you landed Scott Brick for your aviation thrillers. So
yeah, that was a
you
big
go to
big
him,
swing.
or
I did, yeah. And that was a deliberate choice on my part, where I was thrilled with my previous narrators I had for my science fiction books too. I think that they'd done a great job, and getting to hear my stories come to life through the voice of a talented actor is one of the high points of the publishing process for me. And I love collaborating with someone who's talented at that skill, and what they can do with a story just through the performance aspect is amazing. But I made a very deliberate choice to, because previously I'd made decisions based on what I thought the character would sound like, and I was doing getting auditions from narrators and choosing primarily based on, do I think that this voice aligns with this character, and does this sound this, there was a lot of factors going into it. But when it came to the new series, the Tropic Angel book was the first one, I made a deliberate choice to say, I'm going to go after a narrator who also will bring something to the table, like bring an audience of his own. And looking around through the thriller genre, um, and looking at kind of like who my target readers were also going to be listening to, you can't really beat Scott Brick. Like he's done so much Tom Clancy stuff. He's done the Jack Reacher series books. He's done Jurassic Park. He's done all these amazing blockbuster books. It was a big swing, going kind of messaging his agent and saying, hey, I'm interested. And they kind of try the initial polite brush off of like, okay, yeah, but it's expensive and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know. Like, just, that's fine. Tell me what the number is. And I'll, thankfully, I'm a pretty smart businessman where I save up for things. So I was good on that front, but they still had to get through kind of a vetting process where they only take on a couple different indies a year or whatever it was. And, so you submit your book and it goes to like an acquisitions team, and they have to read it and they have to like it. So it had taken a while, and I'd almost given up. I'd kind of gone back to the audition front, and I'd gotten another like 100 auditions. I had some other really great narrators to choose from too that were talented guys. So it wasn't going to be totally bleak if I didn't get Scott. But then right as I was, getting ready to pick someone else, I got an email back from Scott's team, and they're like, we loved it. We want to do it. We're going to recommend Scott reads it. And I'm like, okay. All right, we're in. Like I said, it was a process because he's such a busy guy, and, he's lined up forever from other publishers that want to do it. But once he actually read them, we ended up doing 2 back to back. We did book 1 and book 2 at the same time because the whole process had taken a while, and I had already had the second book out at that point. So I'm like, all right, let's just do them together. And he did it, and he really enjoyed the process, which made me feel great. because now he's done my third one since then, and he sent me a message after. He's like, I'm just really enjoying reading these. Like, you keep writing them. I'll keep narrating them for you. I'm like, this because he actually grew up, interestingly enough, around small airports, so it kind of had some nostalgia for him, and he, kind of brought that a little bit to the performance, and it just, it means something to him too, in addition to me. And I'm writing about a very special place. I'm writing about an airport that actually exists here in St. Pete, where I live, and I've worked there for 20 years, and I've set the stories there, and it's kind of a love story to aviation in general. But all those combined things, and Scott brought his, world-class talent to it. And then, of course, he also brought his readership over. Like, he's got listeners who just follow him around. Like, well, whatever Scott's reading, I'm just going to listen to that, because they just love the way he narrates. And that's been great, because like I'm discovering, or readers are discovering me, and I'm getting these new relationships just because, Scott brings them to the table, which is fantastic. And it's been a really beneficial thing. And I do definitely recommend, if you can afford it, like, get the best narrator you can find, and just build a relationship and collaborate, because it pays off.
Well, that was one of my questions, was that by choosing Scott, you were going to pull his followers into your books.
Mhm.
That was a pretty smart decision on your part.
Yeah, it paid off. It was like I said, it was a kind of a gamble. I wasn't sure, but I knew when you start out, you have to make some decisions based on genre, And if I had pulled Scott in and tried to get Scott to narrate something else that he wasn't necessarily known for, that wouldn't have been the right decision. I would have, like, if I was still writing science fiction, I would probably go get someone else. I might have gone a different route and gone an actor who's more known for sci-fi. And there's a few out there that are big names that are reading other sci-fi books, and so I think you have to look at your market, and you have to look at, okay, who are my core readers already listening to, and then make it an easy choice for them, so that when they land on your sales page on Amazon and they see a cover that looks like it's the other covers that they like, it's got a cool title, it's got, it's snugly in their genre of choice, and then when they go to look and they see the narrator name, and it's a name they recognize and a voice they like, it makes the whole process so much easier. That's a yes, and then another yes, and then a click and a buy, or a download, whatever it is. So I think that's important to think about going in. So many choices when it comes to marketing all come down to genre. Understanding your genre, understanding the other books in your genre, where on your virtual bookshelf will this land, and what do the other books around it look like? What do their cover designs look like? Who's reading them? Like, who did, what kind of typeface is it? What kind of color schemes are they? Like, how are the blurbs even written? Like, all that stuff matters. Understanding the landscape of what your reader experience is like, how they're shopping, what they're looking at, what they're looking for. And once you kind of, make choices based on those things, I think success follows.
Yeah, I agree. We're kind of glitching here, but I think we can push on through. But definitely knowing what your reader is looking for is definitely puts you right in that right mindset. Was that something you looked at initially going in to the self-publishing world? Did you understand that initially? Was it a long learning process for you to get there?
I've definitely had my ups and downs, and there was a lot of learning that went on over the years. So like I said, I kind of fell into a genre right out of the gate with time travel, where I wrote a book that fit squarely inside of a niche. It was a small niche. Time travel adventure was this, relatively small target and not a huge audience, but they were there. And I learned from my mistakes later. I tried to push out of time travel into mystery thriller earlier on with another series. I wrote a time traveling private detective, and it was very fun. It's, kind of like 80s Knight Rider type stuff, where it was like, neon noir, Blade Runner-esque, techno thriller-ish, kind of stuff in there, where you get this futuristic detective, basically. And it was super fun, and I had a great time. The books are good. People that read them love them. But the problem was I was crossing two genres. In order to read them, you had to like both private detective mystery thrillers and time travel. And when you show that Venn diagram of where those things overlap, I thought initially, mistakenly, that if you take your existing audience and push it up into mystery thriller, this larger audience, I would get both. But that's not true. You get the intersection of those two. You get the people that like both. And that was a big learning experience for me, because I'm like, okay, I'm writing these better books, essentially. I was a better writer at that point. I was writing, tighter paced, page turner stuff with, cliffhanger chapters that were just really driving people through the story. But the audience was smaller. So I had to, reassess and think, okay, it's important that when you market your book, that you put it out directly in the middle of a target. Like, hit the bullseye. Don't try to hit two bullseyes simultaneously. You're not trying to hit two targets at once, because it's just less effective. So it's important to think of it that way. Think of a genre as a target, and you're the one shooting at it. The odds of being able to hit both, like if you try to overlap a target with another target, like, what are you even shooting at? Like, you got to hit the one or hit the other one. Like, don't. And then, so I made a very deliberate choice with that second series that I'm going to write it as a mystery thriller with a time travel element. But I also didn't realize that time travel was somewhat of an exclusionary element. It's like, okay, I'm writing a mystery thriller, but I'm going to stick a vampire in there. It's going to exclude some people. Some people are going to see the word vampire and be like, nope, that's not for me. I'm not into fantastical. Whereas what I ended up doing, and I found out that aviation, much like boats and other things that are in the thriller, are non-exclusionary niches. So no one reads a mystery thriller and goes, oh, this has an airplane in it, I'm putting this down. Like, it's just not a thing. So you have to look at your particular genre and bring something to it that's fresh. Like, maybe it's your knowledge of boats, maybe it's your knowledge of, we were talking before about an author that was in the CIA. So, like, if you've got something in your hip pocket that is your talent, your card that you can play, that gives you that fresh perspective, that authenticity on whatever your genre is, great. Play that card. Definitely. You want it. You want to make yourself known in a particular way, but just don't pick something that's going to exclude people. Like, one of the thrills of reading is, of course, coming to it and learning something. We all have that pleasure button that we're kind of pushing when we're reading a book, where we learn something new. If I read The Martian by Andy Weir, or if I read, Project Hail Mary, like, I feel smarter because he's real into math and science. And, like, I feel like I'm taking a math class every time I read one of those books. I'm having a good time, but I feel a little smarter at the end. And I know when I read an Andy Weir book that I'm going to get some math and physics in there, and I'm going to learn something. And that's a pleasure. So, like, when people read my books, they're like, okay, I may not know a lot about airplanes, but by the time I finish this book, I'm going to know a little bit more. And it's just kind of a cool topic. There's a lot of people that are, into it, So if you can choose something that has some cool factor to it, and then, don't overdo it. Like, you definitely don't want to drown your readers in technobabble about your particular, you're not showing off. That's not the point. It's just providing authenticity. And I think if you can find that intersection of where good fiction meets, authenticity in some sort of, little niche, you're golden.
There's definitely a fine line between providing the technical expertise that you possess and, not boring the audience with it.
Yeah. I think one way to look at it is to think, can I just use this to make my character more interesting? Like, one of the books in our genre, and this kind of the tropic authors genre, is the Doc Ford series, where, it's kind of the standard trope. Guy lives on a boat, or lives on a, house on stilts, or whatever the thing is that, all these guys have in these books. But in that case, Doc Ford was had marine biology background. So if you read those books, you're going to learn a lot about sharks. You're going to learn about sea life. It makes that character more interesting. He's not just guy solving problem, saving the girl, blah, blah, blah. He's also got something else to him that makes him unique. And I think if you can look at your character and be like, okay, well, what else does my guy have going on, or girl, or whoever it is you're writing, besides being an action hero? What else are they good at? Do they play the piano? Do they, cook well? Like, are they especially, talented at something that makes them interesting? Because we've all got other things going on besides just our main job. So I think that if you think about, how can I present this new material to my audience, obviously pick something that you actually know what you're talking about, but then present it in a way that just highlights your character and makes your character that much more interesting and fascinating to read about. And then the readers want to come back and learn more each time and kind of explore this world. That's one of the things that I think that readers like about my series, is that they're returning to this airport. They're returning to this maintenance shop, this hangar where my guy works out. Like, his he works out of this shop, and it's a fun place. Like, the coffee's good there. There's he's got a dog and a cat, and the airplanes are cool. Like, people are riding motorcycles and driving cool cars. Like, it's a vibe that people want to return to. It's like, every time we pick up the Harry Potter books, we want to end up back at Hogwarts. Like, if one of the books took place completely elsewhere, like, it's not as interesting. Like, we want to return to those same characters and those same places and get that experience every time we pick one of those books up. So I think that's another thing to find in your fiction. Can you ground it somewhere that's really cool? Can you keep bringing readers? What are the readers coming back for? And when you figure that out, then you start to have a successful series.
Yeah, absolutely. There used to be a kind of I don't know, a trope that said that our characters needed to have a flaw. So you end up seeing these guys that are either alcoholics or borderline functional drunks, or they have some sort of flaw. Do you find that putting the character, like giving the character more, like you talked about, can cook or have a dog, or is that more relatable to readers than a character with some sort of deep flaw?
I think you have to back up a step and look at the story structure that you're creating too, because a lot of times the very first novel is going to be a change arc character where you've got someone overcoming something. And if you're writing a change arc character, then the flaw is related to the plot in some way, where they cannot overcome the obstacles in their path until they become a better person and overcome this flaw. That's different than just having your character have character defects in a flat arc series. So what most mystery thrillers have is a flat arc character where instead of having a lie that they believe that is negatively impacting them, they actually hold a truth. They know something that the rest of the characters don't know. There's a truth that they hold dear, and by holding on to that truth, they influence the world around them. So each time we meet a flat arc character, every time you watch Columbo, I mean, Columbo's not any different. He just comes into the story and solves the mystery differently. The mystery changes and the characters around him change. Same with James Bond, Jack Reacher. All these characters are flat arc characters. So they don't necessarily need, like, you can, if you make that guy an alcoholic and just have him have ongoing problems, that's just more, it's more of character dressing at that point. Like, and that's not the same thing as having an arc where someone really changes and grows and becomes a better version of themselves. And it's essential to the story that they do so, because if they don't, then the villain wins. That's so understanding that. I think is essential for writers, and some people don't realize that there's more than one type of arc, and different types of characters you can write. We've got, of course, we got the change arc, we've got the flat arc, we've got the fall arc, and we've got tragic arcs, which is oftentimes our antagonists and our villains, where they never do learn the lesson. They're a change arc character who doesn't change, and then therefore they fail, and then they die, or they lose at the end. Sometimes you're writing multiple at the same time. Like right now, I'm writing a story where there's 4 different arcs in there. I've got, there's only one main character, my Luke Angel character. He's a bit of a flat arc character. He's driving through the story, but he affects change as he goes through. But there's other characters in the story that are simultaneously experiencing change arcs, or their fall arcs or tragic arcs, because of being around him. Like, they've made choices, but because they're confronted with this truth from your flat arc character, they are forced to change, or they're, something, only one of them can win. And that's what you see a lot of times in a thriller, where the characters aren't changing a ton, but the world is. And that's important to know the difference.
Man, I love talking to other authors because I, yeah, I just learned so much right there, that little monologue, and so
good. I can geek out about, this is the sort of thing that I geek out about all the time. I am such a story structure nerd that you can get me going forever on character archetypes and storytelling. It's, man, just tell me what's up.
Let's talk about that. How you tell that story? Are you very structured? Do you have are you a plotter or pantser?
I'm super structured now, and I'm getting more structured the more I go. I'm a big believer. Right now, I'm using Dan Harmon's Story Circle a lot, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Harmon or not, but he was the writer of the TV show Community, and he's famous for this particular plot circle where he breaks it up into any story into essentially 8 parts. And it also aligns well. If I've also learned recently about the 8 sequence story structure, which is something that kind of lines up with it well. But it's a play on your kind of standard 3-act structure where hero starts in a normal world, kind of an ordinary place. We meet the hero, opening image. We see there that before anything happens. Then we have an inciting incident, which then drives them into um, having to adapt. And then usually plot point 1, which is like, the quarter of the way in, we have to actually engage. This is, in a character arc story, this is Luke actually deciding to go with Obi-Wan and leave Tatooine to go on this adventure. His aunt and uncle have died, so that's been the inciting incident, and now he has to leave. And he has a goal now. Also, he has a need. Usually in that section we've developed, the character wants something. Shrek wants these darn fairy tale creatures out of his forest, once and for all, damn it. And so he's going to go off and talk to Farquaad and get these darn things out of it. So like that's that stage where the character wants something, right? And then they enter what we call the extraordinary world, or the so this is, Harry Potter goes off to Hogwarts, or, in this case, Shrek goes off on his adventure to try to, figure out how to get these fairy tale creatures out. And he ends up meeting the donkey, and he ends up having to be sent on this quest to save a princess. So this is the quest portion. We're fully into Act 2. The character is committed to something. In the case of a mystery, like a flat art character, they're not necessarily, like, maybe they're looking to solve the mystery. That's the need they have. And now they're entering into the story world of like, okay, who are the criminals? Who I have to go into this underworld basically to find who the bad guys are. Right. And then we carry on, and then we hit the midpoint, and then there's usually a big revelation there. We have to work our way all the way around the circle to the climax, where we're finally resolving all these things. Like, there's a lot of little steps along the way. And I don't know how nerdy you want me to get on this, but
I was going to kind of bring it back to you. You're using this circle to plotting everything out. Like, are you hitting the big arcs, or how are you structuring the story? You yourself, are you pantsing it through with hitting some marks? Or I'm like a giant, but with all the ideas written down on it.
I try to nail down at least those 8 items pretty well. And I like to know what my climax is going to look like. I like to know what the twist is going to be. If there's going to be a twist, I need to know that in advance. That way there's signposts, something to write towards. There's plenty of open space in there. And I like to equate it to putting rafters in the attic, and you're trying to walk across. If you're going to try to walk across that space, you need the rafters. You can step across open space. There's plenty of open space in there that you can fill in with all kinds of stuff. But you at least have firm footing that you can make it to the other side with just the basic structure of what you laid out. As long as those pieces are there, you'll get there. And I think that's how, readers want to know they're in good hands when they enter a story. They want to know that they're going to get to a satisfying conclusion. And I feel better writing the story as the writer, knowing what the ending's going to be, because I know that they'll get there. I know that they're going to be satisfied. I don't know exactly how they're going to get there. I don't know every single paragraph of the way, but I know it's going to be satisfying. I know they're going to like the ending because I like the ending. So early on, I think there's a temptation as writers to start just pantsing your way into a story, and we fall back on this fundamental understanding of storytelling that we all have from growing up watching a billion movies and TV shows and reading a lot of books. So we know the fundamentals of what a story is. Like, humans have been telling stories for centuries, and it's part of us. So you can get there that way, but it's kind of like, if you get in your car in Florida and you want to get to Michigan again, and you just start driving, you might eventually get there, but you're probably going to take a lot of detours, right? But if you put these guideposts along the way, if you actually map it out, you'll get there more efficiently with less wandering, and you just get a more satisfying experience out of it, in my opinion. So the more advanced I get as a writer, the more structured I get, as opposed. It also just makes me write faster, gets the story done quicker. I can actually get it out, and then still be enthusiastic about it, and then move on to the next one. So for me, it's a win-win.
So what's your timeline from putting the first word on the paper to publishing the story?
It's getting a little faster. I would say maybe 8 months or so. I've got some definite lulls in my schedule. I have small kids, so summertime is hard to get anything written. Yeah. There's summer camps going on. So then December is usually absolute nonsense. Anything after Thanksgiving is if I get anything done in the month of December, I'm surprised until, January kicks back in and the kids go back to school. But so I try to get the bulk of my writing done, after the kids go back to school, and then, again in the spring, and I try to have it done before summer. And then I'm just one book a year right now. I'd love to be writing more, and maybe down the road I'll be doing more. As this series has kind of taken off, it's given me a little bit more free time because I have another job. I have a aviation job down at the airport where I give exams to people who want to be airplane mechanics, and it's great. It's a wonderful gig. I enjoy it. I do that, part time. I usually write in the mornings, and I go do that in the afternoons. As this, freedom has come from the success of the stories, it's given me a little more time to write. So I could conceivably write 2 in a year, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I try to write at a natural pace. I try not to force myself to get too much done at once. I consistently staying in the story is important. And then if you do that, I think the story makes it out. But there's a lot that goes into it before you ever, in my case, like I'm doing the plotting, I'm doing the structuring before I ever put the first word down. So I've got to have a pretty good grasp of it before I start. And sometimes I'll write the first few chapters just to get a feel for it, and just to stick my toes in the water. And then I'll stop and I'll go back and structure some more. Because I find as a writer, the things that slow you down the most, whether you're pantsing or plotting, it's the same thing. It's just not knowing something. When you don't know something, you slow down and you have to figure it out. So you can either figure it out in advance or you can figure it out on the fly. Either way, you still have to do the same problem solving. I just find that there's less rewriting later if I do it in advance, because I'm one of those people that gets published this nowitis where once it's done, I just want it out and I want to go ahead and publish. I'm so excited about hitting the end that I just want to revise this thing, as quickly as possible, get it edited, copyright it, edited, and proofread and out the door, because I'm ready to share it. Yeah. So for me, editing as I go is part of my process. I'll go back and reread, re-edit. Some people will just sit there and type all the way to the end and then never even look back, and then go back and do a pass afterwards. I'm like, I don't know how they do that. I'm putting rafter by rafter out there and then filling in the gaps, make sure there's the next rafter I've got in place already before I'm writing to it. So everyone's got their structure, but definitely don't do what I do. Do what you need to do is what I always give writers that advice, because if you ask 5 writers how to do something, you're going to get 5 different answers, and they might all be correct.
Absolutely, because I would say that 3/4, if not more, of the authors that I've talked to on this podcast, they're all pantsers, and they'll just
shocked. I'm absolutely shocked.
So
and confused. I don't know how they do it.
I fall in that category too. And those days when I get partway into a story and I go, this doesn't work, and I erase a lot of words and start over again. And then you get to that point where you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And you're stuck, and it takes a while to move through. You got to. So I've been trying to, have some bulletin points to hit along the way, and half the time it doesn't. Something happens in the story that I didn't see on the bulletin point, and then changes the whole structure.
Yeah, that definitely happens. Like, just because you have a roadmap doesn't mean you can't take detours, and you can't. You can always have fun along the way. You don't have to stick to it rigidly. I just find security in it, in knowing where I'm going, and I'm impressed by people that can pants consistently. Stephen King manages to write these huge doorstopper novels that way, and I just don't know how. But everyone's got to find their path, and like I said, we're all cracking the same nuts at the end of the day. We're just using different tools.
Yep. I saw Jeffrey Deaver came to Key West Mystery Fest one year, and he was talking about his process, and basically he has a giant bulletin board, and everything goes on Post-it notes, and he has it all laid out, every scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything, and then he sits down and writes it, and I'm like, yeah, I guess. But
I scribble it in notebooks.
Yeah.
So I've got these journal books, and I know the audio listeners won't be able to see it, but basically I craft out my various story circles, and I'll do them for individual characters. So a lot of it's character growth. Like, if you know how your characters, if they are changing, and you know where their changing points are, like, then that's going to align with your structure. You're going to have structure somehow, because you can't avoid it. Like, these characters are going to grow, and they grow in usually in ways that we expect, because a lot of it is setups. It's setups and payoffs. So whether you're pantsing or not, or plotting, you're still doing the same thing. As you're pantsing along, you're still setting things up. Therefore, there is going to be a payoff on the other side. So you can kind of mirror what's going to happen, and you can anticipate what's going to happen because you just have to pay off all the things that you set up. Yeah.
So let's move over to your stories are out. You've got a ton of reviews on your books. Is that just from pushing them out there and selling, advertising and selling them, or that you have a huge following?
I don't have a huge following, but I am very particular about asking for reviews when people correspond with me. So I've made that a point recently where if someone emails me, for example, says, "Hey, I really loved your book," I'm like, "Great, thanks, I appreciate that. I'd also really appreciate a review on Amazon if you have time." And I don't know how much that matters, but like I do it almost every time. Like if I see a Facebook comment on my Facebook ad, people are like, "Oh man, I really love this series." I'm like, "Fantastic, I'd appreciate a review." And just kind of reminding people that like, hey, thank you for taking time to like email me personally all your thoughts, but also, by the way, like this would also be really useful to hear, because I have people that come up to me at the airport sometimes that have read my books, and they'll come find me personally and tell me about their experience, and we'll sit there and chat about how they found this part of the story. They're like, this is wonderful and I enjoy this. It's a pleasure for me to hear that. But I'm also like, hey, can you turn around and say the things that you just said to me? Can you say that online? Because that would be great. I would quote that. And which you don't want to be obnoxious about it, but I do make an effort there. And I make sure I put it in the back of their books. Obviously, it's one of the first things I ask. Hey, please review this. And I keep up pretty good correspondence with my readers. So when they email me, I email them back, and I try to answer all my emails if I can. It can be a lot of work sometimes, but and I make sure that my newsletter is engaging. I'm putting one out every 2 weeks now. I have some friends that do it every week, and I can't quite pull that off. But 2 weeks has been working for me. I've been doing it every 2 weeks, and even though I put out a book a year, I still find I've got stuff to say. So I say it, and I let people see what's going on at the airport, and I see what's going on with me and my kids and life and airplane ownership and stuff like that. And it's been fun, and the reviews just seem to show up. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I think like I said, if you write a good book, but then you also have to ask. Like people, a lot of people will leave ratings, but you kind of have to ask for the reviews, I find. But I have a good review team as well. I have a few people that will get, kind of my alpha team that'll read it right out of the gate, test fly it for me, and they are usually pretty good at reviewing just to get the ball rolling. It's not a huge team. I've actually whittled it down over the years just to get the people I really enjoy interacting with, and then the reviews show up eventually.
Yeah, they're you get that core group that will leave the review, and I like to send an email to them and say, hey, the book is out. Can you go leave a review? And about half of them will do it. And I don't know. I like to ask and they'll put a little thing down at the bottom of every newsletter that says, hey, here's a link, go review the book.
And there's something to be said for personal contact versus like, I get the same thing. I play a lot of pickleball. And if I'm trying to get a group of guys together to go out and play pickleball, if I message the whole group at the same time, like, hey, I'm looking for 4 people, I get crickets back. Yeah. If I individually text the same group, if I text them individually, I get responses every time because they're like, oh, I can't just hide in like the anonymity of the crowd. This person's specifically asking me something. I have to respond. And so if you do the same thing with your readers, like if you actually directly ask them point blank, hey, will you leave me a review in an email? They're like, oh shoot, I had to go do that because this author knows whether I do or don't, and that works. It forced their hand a little bit. They just can't hide in the crowd and pretend they did.
Yeah, well, people like to be asked, and they also I don't know. I find that they don't always like to be arm twisted and that kind of stuff. So,
sure, yeah, you have to do it in a pleasant, friendly way.
Yep. So overall, I mean, just this is pretty much to wrap it up because we're hitting that mark. So
all right,
my
went by fast.
Question to just about every author who comes on is, what do you want readers to take away from your books? Maybe just not with the story, but how they connect with you as an author.
That's a great question. I think that I want people to step into these stories, trust that they're going to have a fun time. I often pitch them as like Magnum PI with a plane. where you get kind of this pretty lighthearted, fun, hanging out in paradise, but having a good, interesting mystery along the way. And like I said, I'm really hoping to bring some authenticity to especially the aviation aspect. I get a lot of reviewers that are pilots and former people who have been involved in aviation, and I'm really happy to have found that group, and for them to have taken such a strong liking to the series and told their friends, and it's spreading by word of mouth around the aviation community, which I really appreciate. But I'm also really excited about just the general mystery thriller readers who want to have a good experience in a cool Florida setting, and um, just know that it's mostly going to be happy endings, and there's going to be some action, but it's not overdone. There's going to be some mystery. There's going to be a little bit of romance in there, but it's most of all, it's just going to be a good time, and hopefully delivered well with a stellar narrator and a high quality storytelling. So if people go in expecting that and they come out satisfied, then I'm happy, and I'll keep doing it. I'm just going to keep writing this series for as long as people want to keep reading it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I mean, this is fun. That
Yeah.
always goes by fast for me. You get me chit chatting, and you just gotta tell me when to shut up. So
Well,
this has been
like I
fun.
said, I learned some new stuff today, and I always
Good.
enjoy it. So,
Good.
and that's a wrap for this episode of Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. Thanks to Nathan Van Coops for joining us and sharing his perspective on building aviation thrillers. You can find more about his books at nathanvancoops.com and follow him on social media to keep up with his latest releases. If this episode hit the mark, share it, leave a review, and subscribe for more conversations like this. I'm Evan Graver. Thanks for listening. Stay sharp, write hard, and keep your fiction tactical.